Good evening. It's a little bit past 7 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. Baylor, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Langness.
Present.
Commissioner Gerard.
Here.
Commissioner Keen.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Batty. And Commissioner Black.
Here. Well, thank you. We ask you if you're able to please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from the July 27, 2018 meeting.
So move.
Second. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Eric?
July 27, 2018 has not occurred.
Oh, good catch.
Ah, June.
Thank you.
All right. I guess my glasses may have helped there. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Tonight we have two public hearings, and the way this will work this evening is that the city will present the application as they understand it. The commissioners will then ask any questions they may have, clarification, any other information they need. We will then ask the applicant if they would like to say a few words. We may have a couple questions for the applicant then. Then we will hold the public hearing. At that point, I'll give a little bit of instructions. We'll let everyone who wants to speak to the issue speak. And then after that, we'll close the public hearing and we'll bring it back for a decision by the commission. And that'll repeat itself for the second item. So the first public hearing tonight is a grading permit application for Rock Builders. And I'm not going to read all of the PID number. We're going to hold a public hearing and consider a grading permit application. Donovan, are you presenting?
Yes, sir.
It's all yours.
I'd like to present the grading permit application for Rock Builders. Greg Radefeld is here to represent the application. I'd like to show you the basic location, which is southeast of the intersection of Imperial and Highway 97. Sorry for the confusion there. It is a parcel that's currently zoned rural residential, and a grading permit, this is the parcel, and the grading permit is something of a unique application in that it needs to follow the CUP review and process before the Planning Commission with the public hearing, but is not a CUP, and also in this case, it is not a plating exercise as well. What the applicant seeks to do, as shown in the submitted plan, is to remove about 145,000 cubic yards of soil on this, something of a knoll or a ridge that bisects the property, in anticipation of eventual, subdivision, major subdivision, but this is not a subdivision review process. And the entrance to the site is about 500 feet down Imperial off of Highway 97, shown here. And this is a really rough road just concept, but it does show how the trucks would then come here and basically remove about 35 feet of soil in this area, and then slope these sides to the southern boundary and to the northern boundary. Currently, the site, as you can see from the aerial, It's heavily wooded with some wetlands in the area, and there is going through a wetland delineation process to make sure those wetlands are not impacted, or if they will be impacted through development, that there's a replacement process. And the applicant is also subject to the Woodland Preservation Plan regulations, which require some amount of tree replacement on these sloped areas, which would benefit and replace a buffer that there currently is between the existing property and the highway to the north. The city engineer offers a comment letter, and it's the staff recommendation is that a permit be, issued for a year and with a potential renewal through the Planning Commission. This process could be done through a development agreement with a letter of credit to ensure that restoration does occur in the site, and also that the applicant be responsible for any damage done to the road with the hauling. And so at this point, the staff recommendation is for approval of the grading permit with the conditions noted in the staff memo. I'd be happy to take any questions from the Planning Commission.
Any questions for Donovan? Mike?
And can you please go over how this property is now guided on the comprehensive plan and what the zoning is?
Zoning is rural residential, and it is guided as, I believe that's low density, future land use.
And what's the minimum lot size right now?
Minimum lot size currently is 5 acres per lot.
And is this area planned for, or what is the plan for extension of municipal utilities into this area?
Right now, this is within the MUSA, but there's no plans for extension of public water and sewer to the area. What's shown here on the concept is just for illustrative purposes for looking at the Woodland Preservation Plan. They would have a private well and septic.
One more question. In the staff report, there was an exhibit that showed soils. Can you put that up on the board?
Yeah, that was part of the, the submittal, sure.
And unfortunately, he didn't mark the property boundaries on this map. But I think for the most part, the soil, that there and the legend below that reflects the type of soils in there, and I believe for the most part, they want to mine sand. The hill that we are talking about for mining is indeed an area of sand. Am I correct?
I think it is identified as 132D, which would be a sandy loam. I believe that's a soil. I know sandy is in there, but I don't believe that's would be extracted as a sand.
I guess my line of question is just to wonder what we're searching for here, what type of soil are we after here? And it appears to me that there must be a field of sand out there that the applicant wants to remove and.
Perhaps. I believe Mr. Radefeld could answer that question better than
Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions for Donovan? Mike?
Your entrance, is that going to be between the wetlands B and C? It looks like that's where it is, but you've got a wetland C up above and wetland B to the south of there. Is that where the entrance is going to be, like that higher land, or are they going to fill that in?
No, that's, yeah, I believe it'll be within the wetlands. I've walked the property, and there is some area between those wetlands to enter the property.
Okay, are they removing the soil off-site, or are they just moving it around off that ridge to level things off for for the property?
It's my understanding they're removing it off-site, with some kept there for fill to replace, to create that slope shown in the, like those contours.
Yeah, I see the slopes, but I was wondering, because there's a lot of trees in there, so are they just pretty much leveling off the top section of that ridge?
There are, it'll be level at about you can see about the 925 elevation.
Right.
But the ridge,
It
line
drops
looks like
down
it's
to
about
960.
960.
Right.
So, they're taking this down to about, somewhat, obviously it'll need a drain, but somewhat flat.
So they're leveling it off, so that means they're gonna be clear cutting all them trees and removing all the trees?
Yes.
Okay. Then my last question is, street sweeping out on the main street, mud, dirt, debris from all the hauling, since they're hauling a lot of it off-site. Is that gonna be, mentioned?
Correct. It'll be basically a construction site, so they'll be subject to the watershed rules, sediment erosion control, and, inspections from both the watershed district and the city.
Okay.
Donovan, I noticed that we're gonna get a watershed approval and then stormwater. If we were to have this as a plat for development, would there be anybody else that would have to put their stamp on it? Any other entity? That makes sense?
No, it's city municipal property. It's not in the shoreline overlay district, so, and DNR is the only one that usually, or MnDOT, of course. Not, there's not a MnDOT permit required here because they're not draining into it or, working within that MnDOT right of way.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
What's the timing of restoration of the trees? What's the plan, how does that plan work?
That, through negotiation with Mr. Radefeld, because they'll require, as noted in the engineer's comment letter, pretty much immediate restoration in order to make sure that hillside doesn't erode. So that would be, part of the, immediate restoration. We'd be talking about tree replacement.
Ryan?
Just to quickly add on that, because of the amount of area this site is disturbing and quantity being removed, they're required to have a erosion sediment control permit from the watershed district and an NPDES general stormwater permit. So with that being said, there's thresholds and requirements in those permits that if exposed soils are left so long and not being worked, they have so much time and what slopes those are to temporarily restore those. So that's, this will be an active site, so with an active site, the watershed district does do inspections, and then we'll be providing reports. So within all that, if there are erosion issues or not temporary covers being established, if they're not working it and it sits stagnant for a month, obviously there would be out of compliance, because that's just all the rules within there, and then, the sweeping, that'll all be addressed, and inspections will be performed by the watershed district. And the city could, weigh in on that as well, but. So they got the two big sediment and erosion sediment control permits that are required because of the area of disturbance. Even, the tree removal, exposing soils, so stuff will have to be replaced. There is silt fence and all the other BMPs that'll be installed, rock construction entrance and stuff like that, so.
Thank you. Mike?
I got one more maybe silly question, but on the grading plan, Donovan, the little symbols that look like trees are around the perimeter. What are those supposed to be trees? The little on the grading plan. What are they demonstrating there? What? Little.
I'm not sure. I don't think it's a silly question, but I think it's just meant to represent some of the existing tree canopy, because it does, or maybe it's actually no. I don't know.
Okay. Yes.
Ryan, it looks to me from this grading plan like the area where they're gonna, the bottom of the area where they're gonna excavate shows like it's dead black.
Oh.
Is that
So
in everybody's best interest to
It would not be in the property owner's best interest to leave it dead flat and allow things to grow and wetlands to expand, right? So, you know, during construction, they'll most likely just shape things to drain where they're working. You know, you don't know where they're gonna start. Probably one side, work out or work in. So as they continue to work and want an active site, they're gonna have to do what we do on street projects, shape things to drain at night. Otherwise, if you run into some clay loam soils here, they won't be able to get into the site for weeks if they don't properly, you know, allow things to drain, so.
So do you require, any kind of, I mean, do we know, like, how long, I mean, is this gonna be something where they go in and just do this, or maybe that's a question for the owner?
We don't know, that's why I recommended a 1-year thing in case we have issues, that we could revisit the situation if things go well. There should be no issues if he needs more time or, you know, stuff like that, because.
But this isn't something that's gonna happen over 5 years. I mean, this isn't a sand pit site that when he needs dirt, he's gonna come in.
I'd have the developer would have to comment on that.
Any other questions? Hearing none, would the applicant like to say a few words or speak? Please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Greg Radefeld, 29560 Glader Boulevard, Lindstrom. I represent Rock Builders. I own Rock Builders. We've dealt with the city for like 15 years. We've done National Builders, which is another of our companies. Did Island Estates. We did the Grand Oak project, and we did the project behind Echo Bakken. And I think we've had good rapport with the city on all those projects. Had no, we never had any problems with anything. Island Estates, we had a little trouble with Rice Creek watershed, but not necessarily anything that wasn't corrected. This project,
Get you a little closer to the mic, okay?
this piece of property is like 18 acres. And because there is, when you look at the map, there's quite a flat field behind, but you can't get to it because the state won't give you access off of 97. So your only access is off of Imperial. The city has a slope requirement for any kind of road that it can't exceed a certain grade. So that pretty well depicts how much you have to cut off of that knob to get a road to be acceptable to the city. So that kind of is what mandated the elevations. As far as the material that's in there, from the little testing we did, I had my little mini excavator and I did it. There's about 5 feet of real sandy loam topsoil material that the engineer designated a spot, down where that cul-de-sac is, to stockpile this material to reapply to the side slopes. Those little stars that you're looking at, I believe, are trees that are intended to be left in place. And part of the tree deal the engineer had put together leaves a buffer between 97 and anything we're doing, so those trees would be not disturbed. The stuff on the east side, down in the flat area, an awful lot of that is undisturbed with those trees. The stuff on the south side and east side, the south side, same deal. The top of the ridge, all those trees would be maintained. And on the Imperial side, because of the wetlands, most all of that back almost to the toe of the hill would be maintained as it is, other than the road coming in. The makeup of the trees in there are basically popple. They're aged popple, and if you go through and look at it, you get a popple's not a long living tree. There are some really beautiful oak trees in there, and we're going to try to maintain. The problem with the oaks, two problems. One is they're past their prime. Most of them are hollow. So in the developments we've done, especially here in this day and age, you've got the emerald ash borer, you've got oak wilt, you've got your evergreen blight. So you're much better off if you plant disease-resistant trees, which is what we did in Grand Oaks, Island Estates, and over by Echo Bach. Then you're kind of guaranteed a tree that lasts. The other thing that happens is when you select cut in a heavy deal like that, the trees that are left usually either snap off or blow over because they rely on the tree next to it for support. So usually they're very shallow rooted. So that's why we try to do a reforestation thing and plant in some decent trees that'll last. And as far as water shedding off of the property, we obviously can't shed water off this project into the wetlands that are there. So they've got a temporary basin for that water to run to, and that's all protected with silt fence and silt sock. So that's kind of, I do have a home, at least I did this spring, for a lot of the dirt. So that's kind of what spurred it on. I mean, when you calculate 100,000 yards, if you're going to pay to remove it, you're going to have more money in dirt than you're going to have in what the value of the land is. But if you can get rid of the dirt for nothing, if nobody needs it, Schaefer needs a bunch of dirt on their side slopes and stuff. It makes it a lot more appealing. So basically, you're looking at a piece of 18 acres that's undevelopable without this. There's not even a spot to put one house on. So for the city, you'd be better off, obviously, being developed than sit there. So if you have any questions, I sure can answer them.
I think the big question is length of time it's going to take you to clear this, or how long do you expect to be working this property before you're done?
Well, we actually wanted to start on it last fall, but it was kind of a new adventure for the city because there's not many hills in the city. So as things have gone on and progressed, and their hurdles we ended up with, we had to make sure all our I's were dotted and our T's were crossed for the city's sake and for us. We don't like to do anything where somebody's going to stand up later and say, you didn't represent this thing right. I think we've made every effort to be as forthcoming as possible with this project. The deal is if we can get it, of course, obviously, Minnesota, we're going to get into winter and then things shut down and you can't get on the project till May 15th of the next year when road restrictions are on, because we can't get to 97 without traveling on Imperial, which would be a restricted road. Our goal is a year. I mean, that's our goal.
A year from today, a year from what?
Well, it's really an ambiguous question. It is because you've got basically from December to May 15th when you're not going to do anything in there. So I would say 12 months of workable time would, depending on when we start and that would be probably the most accurate answer I could give you. If you wanted us to come back a year from to date or a year from the issue of the permit to make sure what we're doing is everything we promised, I'm more than willing to do that.
Who will do the work?
Who will do the work?
Who?
Basically, I'll run the job myself as far as the grading. Winsmith will do the surveying and the overseeing. Other than that, who is going to be involved in the grading? It could be 2 or 3 different contractors. And I've not been able to commit to any of them until I know where we all stand and what's going on.
How many, may I go?
Go ahead.
how many, you're talking about exporting 140-some thousand yards?
Well, it really is questionable what's going on with that.
Well, say 100
Obviously, we
yards.
don't know exactly, but
Say 100,000
somewhere around
yards.
100,000 yards.
Can you translate that into dump truck loads?
Well, obviously, we're not going to export topsoil because we're going to need that to redo the side slopes and some in different material. And we're also not going to export material that we have to put back on the roads. It would be silly to haul off if we end up with any granular, to haul it off and then turn around and pay $5 a yard to have it brought back again. So if you wanted to pin me down exactly how many yards, it's kind of a nebulous deal. Trucks today, how many, you know, depending if you're running belly dumps, end dumps, tri-axle trucks, nobody runs dual axle dump trucks anymore. So if you figure 22 yards on an end dump per load, divide that into whatever, however many yards are coming off. So that's about where you're going to be. The advantage is I think we've got 2 houses between us and 97, so that traffic, we shouldn't have much of a traffic problem, you know.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, you haven't answered my question. If you've got belly dumps, if you're using belly dumps, how many trips are we talking?
4,500
4,500 trips.
truckloads.
Truckloads.
22 yards,
How many-
100,000 yards.
How many trips can you do in a day?
Well, that's really tough.
The reason I'm asking these questions is that I think you're going to have quite an impact on that intersection of Imperial Avenue, on Imperial Avenue too, and Imperial Avenue and Highway 97.
Well, if they've got a turn lane on coming into Imperial, so the turn lane there, which should circumvent that.
And they may have to take a left turn out, and if they take a right turn out, there's no acceleration lane.
Yeah, true enough.
Other question?
What's the
Gary?
long-term plan? You've got it laid out as a development. That's the plan
Correct,
over time?
yeah. Right now, there is a shortage in Forest Lake of buildable lots. So that's part of what's starting, you don't want to get into a big lengthy deal, but I was going to use a lot of the fill on this job for a job here in town, which has been kind of put on hold. So that was kind of what got me into this thing in the first place. But yeah, the idea is to, as quickly as possible, get the material off, come back with a plan. After meeting with the city, we're really open on the plan, all right? And I've always been in all our projects more than willing to work with the city to see what they want. If they want entry-level houses, where they are and what they're up to. It's never been, and I've developed 18 different projects over the years, starting with Sunwood on Third Lake back with Don Johnson in the late 70s. My goal has never been to come to the city and say, this is what I want, and I'll go through L&I water till I get it. I always found it a lot better to work with the city, say, what do you want, what's going to fit in, what's not going to fit in, and make it work. It's just a lot easier.
Sorry, I might not have been listening carefully, but Donovan, did you say there is sewer but no water to this area?
Neither water or sewer.
Neither.
Neither, yes.
Dennis?
What are those banks? Is that 1 to 5? Are you showing 1 to 5 slope there on the banks?
I think it's 4 to 1.
4 to 1? Okay.
It looks radical on the one because he put it in 1 foot increments.
Yeah, that's okay.
So it probably won't be mobile. We did a project in Lindstrom, the Cove project, and that had a pretty severe slope. What we did is, slopes aren't real susceptible to trees because they like to fall over, and a lot of them don't like to grow on real drained slopes. So usually what we did is we put a lot of shrubbery They're deeper rooted. They don't get blown over because they're not so tall. We use Weaver's trees and landscaping out of Hugo, has done every project we've done. And, you know, they're more than welcome to look at any of our projects to see what we've done. We aren't notorious for planting a bunch of whips that'll take 30 years to turn into a tree. Most of the trees we put in are baskets or direct spaded. You know, one misnomer that a lot of people have is a developer likes to cut down every tree on the place. It's not really the tree. I mean, trees are worth value to a builder and a developer. So you don't go out of your way to cut trees down. I mean, if you can, you try to maintain as much as you can within reason so that you aren't maintaining an old tree that's going to blow over in somebody's yard.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. We may have some in a little bit for you.
Sure.
This is a public hearing, so the way this works is that we'll officially open the public hearing. We ask if you'd like to speak to this application, please come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Spend a couple of minutes giving us your thoughts on the application. We will continue and we will listen to everyone who wants to present this or to speak this evening. When everyone is finished, we'll do a last call, and then we will close the public hearing. That will end the public comment, and it'll come back to the Planning Commission for a decision. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this issue? It's very informal. Just come on up, one after another.
My name is Janet Kubicki, and I live at 21370 Imperial Avenue North, and I've lived there for 43 years. So my concern is the habitat. And no, they aren't all falling down. There are some beautiful trees, and there is some swampland. And my son is a biologist in Costa Rica, and he does a lot of research down there, and he studies amphibians. He's discovered new species, protects habitat, and he grew up in that neighborhood. And when he's home, we always walk the woods and see all the flora and the fauna. And the slope is very steep, but it's old forest, it's old nature. The area aesthetically is not suited, in my mind, for a development. I am worried about where the water's going to go because my land is a little lower. Right now, there are some culverts. But that's a lot of dirt to be taken out of there. And I'm concerned about what's going to happen without sewers and water. It's a natural habitat. It's natural moraines. And I guess I'm concerned, along with my neighbors, who some of them were not able to make it to the meeting, as to how drastically this is going to change things and how much do we give up our natural habitat to put a few more houses in an area that has individual homes. And it's close to Shields Lake. The beauty of Shields Lake is the country surrounding and Forest Hills Golf Course. And you put a development in there, and I think as a resident for 43 years, it would drastically change things around there. And the traffic, now I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting. I don't know where you would be entering. Is it off Imperial?
Yes, correct.
Oh, the traffic would be, that would be insane. That would be insane. And that's a bad corner to pull out of anyway. You know, that's bad. So you're talking some real traffic stuff there. But that's just my opinion, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Would anyone else wish to speak to the application?
Hi, my name is Sherry Weiss. I live at 211 Imperial Avenue, just a little beyond where the entrance would be. I too am concerned about the trees and the habitat. Like she said, there's really beautiful oak trees in there and a lot of wildlife, and it's there's a lot of open space too, so there's room for walking. And I guess I'm concerned that also the watershed, where is the water gonna go? Because that's a very high hill, like it is a moraine, so it's a ridge that goes across there that they'd be cutting right through, it sounds like. I guess you said there wouldn't be a lot of trees disturbed, it'd be pretty much the road itself, where you would be, as far as cutting the swath through the hill, is that correct? Would you be mostly just making a road into it as far as the impact on Imperial and the hill?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff along Imperial will pretty well stay virgin, but the road that goes in, you're obviously gonna have to cut the trees down for the entrance.
So when you talk about cutting out trees that are hollow or have concern, are you just gonna pick through and look at different trees and cut them down?
Probably be clear cut from that graph, other than around the outside edges and the slopes, there probably won't be a tree left.
I'm not following where you're talking about. Is it-
I think he's saying that this will be, the trees will be removed in this whole area. If you can follow where my cursor is.
Okay, so that's 97, right?
Yeah. 97's up here. This is Imperial.
Right, but now where you were looking, were you going along 97, or Imperial then? Show me again, please, I
I'm
missed it.
saying tree removal will be in these areas, and this is where where the soil will be removed. If that's the application proposes to remove that amount of soil.
So the area between where your cursor was and Imperial, that is where the ridge is?
No, the ridge starts here. This is the main slope right on here. So there is some separation between the actual the road goes through into construction entrance would be here, but then trees will remain proposed to remain here. And here, and these are wetlands, so this won't be disturbed all along Imperial there.
So is that the top of the ridge? I'm sorry.
Basically, this is the top of the ridge, right there.
But
I'm saying
on
this.
the side of it, the west of it.
Yeah, this is the slope. So that would be, that's proposed to be removed.
Okay, well, again, I would have concern about the water and just how many trees would be affected. Does Rock Builders already own the land?
Yes.
You purchased it? Okay, so it will be developed at some point, unless you...
Unless you wanna buy it.
Okay, so that's your plan, is it will be developed at some point? And there's no entrance from 97 allowed, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I would agree also with the traffic problem, because that is a terrible street to get out of because it's on a curve, and so you can't see real well, especially from would be the west side. And so with trucks pulling out of there, I think any of us residents ending up behind one of those trucks is going to be a long time before we could get out of our street. And that for a year, that's a long time. That's my concern.
Thank you.
My name is Warren Zenk. I live at 8186 Scandia Trail North, which is to the northwest across the road. And I talked to Donovan when I got here. My concern was traffic. And there's a lot of traffic on 97, and I think it moves too fast. I think the speed limit ought to be lowered to 45 all the way from Manning to the roundabout. But that's a different matter. I looked at this diagram with the slopes on here, and my initial thought was those slopes slope down toward the highway. And as I look at the numbers on here now, it looks like this project is sitting in a bowl, that the water is going to run down into that property. And then when we bought our property where we are, we had water problems because of the sloping. We had to change the grade. And it seems that if you got a septic system that's going to be out in back of these houses somewhere and you got the water flowing down into this bowl, that could be a problem with septic. And then you're more attuned to that. I'm just.
Yeah, actually, the water runoff should be better after we get through than the way it is now. Because you guys have just steep slope, the water has, we get through and we have to put in holding ponds, settlement ponds, infiltration ponds.
Now, the temporary holding pond is not on this map?
That won't be there until the final engineering stuff. But we're Rice Creek Water, the watershed district is going to mandate that engineering when we use that.
Okay, so again, my primary concern is traffic on 97 because it's a struggle to get in and out of our drive from, with the way the traffic is right now, let alone adding 4,500 trucks of dirt coming and going.
Thank you. Anyone else to wish to speak to this application? I'll ask one more time. Does anyone else wish to speak to this application? Seeing no one come forward, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to a decision by the Planning Commission. I will address, and Ryan can probably address it a little better, the water concerns that are runoff. The applicant is required to keep the water on the property that they own, the 18 acres. You cannot create runoff from the property. Am I correct, Ryan? And who will approve the retention pond?
Are you referring to a pond upon actual development project?
Well,
Or as the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District told you, part of your erosion sediment control permit, you're gonna be required to have temporary basins constructed?
That's what they alluded to. I didn't get it drawn, but they don't want their water to run here directly into the pond. The one discussion we had, they were talking at the base of the hill or before the wetland to the north, that there might be some ponding, temporary ponding put in there, which could end up as part of the settlement pond or infiltration pond that we're going to have to do eventually when the final plan is done.
So how I look at this is you got a knoll down the middle, right? So right now water drains to the wetland to the west and the wetland to the southeast. He's gonna flatten that out. Obviously, you're gonna remove tree cover, so your velocity in some short-term period will be a little faster coming off because you don't have the vegetation to slow it down. But that's where he's gonna be responsible through permits to get stuff temporary restored, and then he'll have silt fence perimeter control, but the drainage still will drain to each of the wetlands, you know. And then if they're gonna require temporary sediment basins, you know, that will obviously help stuff in the interim basis until establishments establish or restorations established. But and when it's flat, then you know your velocity will slow back down. But if there are steep slopes left during grading that are all exposed, you know, tree removal, vegetation's removed, your velocities will be pretty high. And if he does get anything that impacts the wetlands, he will be, I mean, that's when it gets pretty, we bring in Washington Conservation District and stuff like that, so.
The watershed district has got us posting a $14,500 letter on this thing for, plus the city, we haven't discussed that yet, but I thought, you know, 14,500, whatever we are, you know, it's not $1,500 to $2,000 anymore, $14,000.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for you, or for the staff. This application, does it go on to the city council, or are we the last step?
We are the final step.
We are the final step.
Can I just say something to the record? Can I go?
Yeah, you gotta go back.
Can I say it from here?
No.
Go back up there? Personally, I'm concerned because I own all the land that is directly west. Mine starts right after the second house and goes down almost a quarter of a mile. And it is lowland, but there are culverts and it's manageable right now. My concern is when they do the construction and start digging things around, this water's going to run right across the street because there's hill there. We're all septic and well, there. And I just keep thinking about the impact, particularly for me when I have a quarter mile worth of land on Imperial. I guess I would want some reassurance or some sort of, insurance that if my land did start flooding and there were water problems, and like other people, we had water problems and we had to put stuff around our house, and there hasn't really been much of a problem with that. But I'm concerned about the building since I have so much frontage, and it's directly across the street from this land we're talking about. I don't know how quickly you think trees are going to grow, but you start clearing that land, and it's going to be a mess. And I think it's going to be a long time before there's going to be foliage and things that will hold that water back, because there is natural lowland there. So I just, for the record, want to state my concern for the flooding that possibly would keep flowing west because the moraine is high and I'm the lower land across the street, for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners?
Did you close the public hearing?
Yes, they did. Doesn't matter. Dennis?
Without beating it to death here, I
just want to make sure that the neighbors understand that even when you're just digging a hole or taking dirt off of a piece of property, it has to be designed. And by that, I mean that we can, the owner of the property and or the developer cannot allow water to flow off of the site any faster than it would under natural conditions. I think Ryan did a good job here of describing the dynamics, that this site is going to go through from the way it is right now through the excavation process. So I think that you can, I can't guarantee 100% everything, but if this site is properly engineered, the hydraulics, the water runoff, the flow of water in and around this site should not change.
Gary?
And I have a hang-up about, it seems like the only non-developed property that exists in Forest Lake today has no utilities. So each development, we're adding wells and we're adding septic. And I don't think that's a good idea. But so is there any way in which city services can be available for that site so that we don't have septic and wells?
It's not planned in the near term. It would take, with current city policy requires, basically assessment petitions to extend the infrastructure in these sorts of cases. And, I don't think that's much of a possibility. As far as the engineering, you'd have to, you'd have to run the, like a sanitary, sanitary might be easier to get to it in the short term because, this is uphill from the lake and the lake is pretty much, Forest Lake. But running the pipe all the way there is, prohibitively expensive. There are many areas within the city where they are zoned residential for development, and they don't have city services currently, and that's just a function of how the city has grown.
So is there anything in our current comp plan that we're dealing with in applying to development today that says that there should be more utility emphasis ahead of time, or?
No, I mean, there's been some discussion. It's obviously, that's something we can talk about with our next agenda item. But, you know, council is aware, and, you know, we've tried to insert that in some conversations, like what, you know, in 2040, you know, how should the utilities be extended in a way that it's more sustainable? But also, this is, you know, this isn't a platting process right now. You know, applicant is seeking to remove the soil, you know, anticipation of development. But I don't think the development, you know, the timeline, the schedule is anywhere aligned with what the city could do in the future to provide public infrastructure to this site.
Dennis?
So how far away is sewer and water from this site?
We could, well,
Public water main in Forest Lake does not extend east of Harrow Avenue.
Okay.
and then you can, and the public sewer runs, well,
It's right down by the lake.
It hugs-
It's right down by the lake.
yeah, pretty much in this area hugs the shoreline.
Yep.
So sewer isn't readily available then either?
Correct.
So it's a mile away, is that
It's not a mile. But
As far as water,
sewer?
I can show you.
Not even.
no, it's not even that far.
From there to there, quarter mile.
No.
So
It's about 500 feet,
you need to go to, you know,
400, somewhere between 400.
just as a crow flies, it's across Highway 97, but whether the topography allows that, you know, that's uncertain. You know, at that nearest point, you know, see, that's the manhole, that'd be the shallowest place. But you know, if this is at 960, well, going down to 925 if approved, you know, that, you know, also it's over here on Imperial. But, you know, many obstacles to extend that.
One other point, the comprehensive plan as it stands today, the utility staging plan does not even anticipate sewer and water to this area, the current comp plan. And if, the applicant really needs to be careful or understand that this property is not zoned for this type of development that you're ghost platting. It's not zoned for that. It's not guided for that. In order to accomplish that idea of a development, you'd have to do a comprehensive land use plan amendment and a rezoning. And, you know, the existing comp plan and the proposed comp plan does not reflect what your intentions are right now. So that, I'm just caution you that's a giant step for you. And, you know, it's your property, it's your dirt, it's your trees. I personally don't have, you own the property. I don't have a personal problem with grading and removing dirt and even removing trees off this land. I do appreciate the fact that you're keeping an outer perimeter of trees that will aesthetically look okay for a while. But I'm concerned with the magnitude of this development, and the magnitude, the size of this amount of grading you're doing, and the longevity of that it's going to take to do the plan, and the traffic impact. Those are big concerns that I have.
What is the, excuse me, Mr. Chairman? What are the precautions as far as the traffic is concerned? Other than just let whatever be will be? Is there?
That's pretty much it.
That's a good one.
Well,
Just interject.
I mean,
Obviously,
it's going to be an
it would
issue.
be the best interest. I mean, you look at Schaefer and the millions of yards of sand that they're hauling in and dirt that they're dealing with. I travel that road all the time. If the traffic is handled decent, I haven't been interrupted by any of their trucks hauling yet. If you have somebody in there hauling, they're gonna do it in hours when there isn't traffic, because nobody wants to sit in a truck for 10 minutes at an intersection waiting to get out on the road, so
But you still end up having to operate within city-approved hours, right? Which is basically, what, 7 to 7, 6 to 6, or whatever?
Correct.
So. And I don't have a solution for it, you know, other than, you know, you got a right in, right out situation maybe, but if you can enforce that, but beyond that, I don't know what you would do.
Pure crapshoot
Other discussion?
on the location.
Eric?
I can kind of see the traffic issues with this particular project as well, particularly at that intersection and how it's designed at 97. And this is similar with 15 different intersections between the golf course and North Shore Trail where I turn every day. And the problem is that there's not a passing lane and people think it's a passing lane. I'm wondering if, and I guess this question is for staff, whether it's Ryan or Donovan, is there a way that we can restrict the hours of trucks moving in and out of the site? I'm less concerned about cars and employees or workers that are going to the site because they're going to just drive their personal vehicles, and I don't think that's going to be an issue. But a fully loaded semi turning there to a curve with high traffic, it's not safe in a lot of that area. And I guess what my question is what's the best path? Is it dictating like a right in, right out, or is it saying post and pre-rush hour times, still allowing them enough time, or can we even do that? Is that even a condition that we have the ability to put on?
So I think by city ordinance, you have the construction working hours that the contractors abide by within a development agreement. If the developer would agree upon some conditions on certain start and stop times, that could be something you could negotiate within. Potentially, he could also install just temporary generic truck hauling signs westbound and eastbound of this intersection on 97. But in the event things or a bad situation starts occurring, MnDOT's going to get a call, and they're going to come in and you're going to have to abide by their rules, right? And that might require flaggers or something like that. So it's kind of hard to answer all the questions on, as the road authority here in this case on 97 is MnDOT, so they ultimately will control that situation. But if they do get complaints, they've been pretty proactive on stuff. To the degree when other companies down the road out of Tiller have been hauling, there's been traffic monitoring being done and 24-hour video, you know, of stuff, just if it became major issues.
So a condition would probably be inappropriate at best on something like that, and I think we just have to rely on MnDOT to suffice that concern should it happen. The other concern I heard from the public was habitat, and it's beautiful driving by that area. I drive by, I live right off of North Shore Trail in 97. Drive by a couple times a day. I love seeing the wetlands from the freeway all the way out there. But the fact of the matter is that development happens and it's not our property. There is property rights. And I think what the developer is asking here is, in this particular proposal, which is the dirt moving part, I think it's reasonable within the standards that we have established in the city. The plan itself, which we're not voting on tonight, I think the developers put it forward. There's some fair concerns from other members, whether, you know, I think if they're plotting more homes than what we allow in that type of zoning, I think we can look at, you know, putting a condition that they put sewer underground for a future hookup, or pipe in the water before they pave the street back there, those types of things. But I think that's a discussion for a much later time. I think the proposal as it stands today is reasonable.
Mike?
Greg, just one question. Where are you going to be hauling most of this dirt and sand to? Is that east of there, or when you come out, you're gonna be turning west?
I would say, and again, I'd say the line should always go west.
Go west? Into the city here?
Yes.
Okay.
Schaefer, they've got a couple of big projects here. My interest is to get the material off there within a year of working time, and maybe quicker. So they're putting up, well, I don't know, that's the interest I've had so far. A lot of the material is gonna go west.
Did you plan on putting up signage then, trucks hauling, if this is passed?
You know, there isn't, with the liability problems there are today, there isn't a trucking outfit in the world that wants to expose themselves to hazards. So if they feel the demand is there, they'll either put flaggers, they'll do a lot of signage, they'll do something, because there's nobody that wants to cause an accident. I mean, the DOT, if you have a truck and it's involved in an accident, they tear that thing apart from one end to the other. And if there's just something that nobody can handle.
See, I think one of the main concerns here tonight is traffic. And that's why I asked, are you heading east or west? Because now that eliminates a lot of the questions. And if you were pulling out and going up the hill with a full load, how long it takes to get up to the top of the hill, or if you're crossing now two lanes of traffic heading west, that just eliminates those questions. But for the other people that were talking about traffic, once this project is done, you're looking at 9 or 10 homes in there. That, to me, that's not a whole lot of more traffic. If there's 2 cars per house, that's maybe 20 vehicles. So.
Well, the only thing else I can say is Brock has been operating out of that hole down there. I don't know that there's been much accidents or problems over the years since I've been a kid. Paul, he's been walking out there for forever. But granted, the traffic has really increased over the years.
Okay.
Is the hauling going to be Monday through Friday, or is it planned to be 7 days a week when it's?
Because of the city mandates, we can't exceed what the city mandates for operating hours and time.
So for perspective, commissioners, I just did the math. If 4,500 trucks is correct, I'm going off.
That's at 22 yards, so.
Yep. So I divided
100,000 cubic yards.
I divided that out by 9 months, because we get 3 months that weather's not very friendly here for anything, right? And if there's 30 days in a month that he's running, it's 16 trucks a day. If it's 20 days, which is subtracting the weekend, it's 25 trucks. So it's regular, but it's not constant.
Other discussion?
So it's fair to say that they're going to have to submit a significantly different site plan than what is shown in our packet here. Is that fair for us to assume that? I mean, there's nothing on this drawing that shows any kind of sediment control or anything.
He'll have to come back with an entire site plan.
No, I'm just
Plat,
talking about
I'm
just talking about just for the dirt removal. What?
Oh, that's already in there.
Where?
They did submit a erosion sediment control plan.
Oh, there
Maybe
is
it's not in your
another, okay,
packet.
so there's another drawing that's not showing, okay, that's fine. I didn't see it on the drawings that were part of the package. It's okay, that's fine.
There were 6 pages of the plan set submitted, and that went to the city, the watershed district as well.
Okay.
Other discussion? Mike?
It is staff's recommendation to approve this subject to the engineer's conditions.
Correct, and the required permitting from the NPD at the ES and the watershed district.
I think there's 5 conditions that the city's looking for. Commissioners, the action we would like to take?
I'll move as recommended by staff with the conditions they've outlined in the packet.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So I will make an announcement here that I know some of you are concerned on the process. So the process, the Planning Commission in this case is the final decision. However, there is a stipulation that if someone disagrees with the decision made, they can appeal it to the City Council. They have 1 week from tonight to get that to an appeal letter, a written appeal to whom, Donovan?
The city, I mean, myself, sure.
To Donovan or Dan or somebody else there, and then City Council will take it up as an action item then. So I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. You're welcome to stay if you like for the comprehensive plan update. It's riveting discussion. So thank you for participating tonight.
Or the non-commercial signs.
Oh, if we spent an hour on signs, we spent 100. All right. Next agenda item is the City of Forest Lake Draft 2040 Comprehensive Plan. We also have a public hearing for this, and we'll have a discussion on the draft plan. This is our second hearing that is required. So, Donovan, you're going to start us out?
Yes, sir. Chair, members of the Plan Commission, this is the second public hearing for our comprehensive plan. And I'd like to, first of all, provide a short introduction to address some of the concerns raised at the last Plan Commission meeting. And first of all, I'd like to, and I've received also some comments from commissioners as well. First thing I'd like to address is a couple of things that relate to the Parks and Trails chapter about additional connections to the Harwood Creek Trail, and also parks that, a commissioner expressed a desire for more parks that accommodate older adults. What I believe the best forum for that discussion is the Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission meeting next Tuesday. And so I encourage you all to attend, and I'll bring forth some ideas on, some of the goals and objectives that could direct the city toward accommodating older adults, as we, currently are in something of an aging population demographic. So, so I'd like to, defer that one to the Lakes, Trails, and Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission. Also, another comment was regarding housing density, and when I got further input on that one, in looking at the future land use plan, the actual, if we look at densities of the TAN area, that's the low to medium residential density areas, which essentially, in the last plan, we converted those into MXR1 zoning district. This is actually a plan at 3 to 6 dwelling units per acre. So this could accommodate, a smaller lot size. That seemed to be a focus of some of the discussion last week. And, with that smaller lot size offering a greater, greater opportunity for more affordable housing. And I'll have to say that, again, the actual zoning where we look at lot sizes is in the next phase, is in the comprehensive zoning that occurs upon the adoption of the comp plan, so we make the comp plan and the zoning consistent So unless there is a specific area that the Plan Commission wants to focus on, there is, the future land use plan could accommodate the smaller lot sizes. If even in that, up to that 6 dwelling unit per acre for those areas within the municipal boundary, as well as, of course, greater density along the mixed commercial areas, if that's how those get, if they retain something of the same nature of our current mixed-use zoning, which allows up to 15 dwelling units per acre.
So Donovan, so that 3.6 units per acre is it's just, on your densities on your different housings, I'm the guy who sent the email in, like it wasn't obvious. Some of them you have like 6 to 10 houses, other will say 1 to 3, and other will say 3.6 acres average, or 10 acre, 10 average. Can we get like the spread and the acreage per acreage that you're kind of trying to find in?
Yeah, 3 to 6 for these.
3.6.
No, 3 to 6 dwelling units per acre.
Your comprehensive plan says 3.6.
Yeah, the current one does.
No, this is out of year 1.
Oh,
Page 18,
I stand corrected.
unless I'm wrong, which I've been quite often today, so.
We can share that burden, I think. The base, and I think that, well, I guess I have to go to look at the, the descriptions again. I was talking to Jane today about, the Bolton and Mann consultant, and that's, I guess I misheard her when we were discussing it.
It says 3.6
I think it's just supposed
on
to,
average. But if it's supposed to say 3-6,
I think it's just supposed to have a dash instead of a decimal.
326. Yeah.
and that's called low, medium density residential.
Yeah, if we could look at,
Page 18.
page
18.
Okay, that is the current language. If I could refer you to page 20.
Future land use.
With the residential density calculations, and the fourth row down, it has 3 to 6 units per acre.
So that's a modification from the existing, is that what you're saying?
Correct. So.
But when you look at that same chart, it also says 15 per acre as high density. And under the mixed use. Now, is that adequate for downtown?
Well, there are.
Can you stay within 15, if there's a 3-acre site, which there's a couple of them down there, if that allows you 45 units maximum, where property might be tuned to 90 units, for example. So is that a CUP situation to get what you need, or?
That's the way it's come. That's the way it's happened. The last two larger developments downtown have come in as PUDs, and they've
PUDs,
been planned unit developments, and they've been more in the 22 to like 23 to 28 dwelling units per acre range.
So now the other thing about that, sticking with that concept, it says desired distribution is 0. So that's it's saying that they don't want any downtown mixed-use housing? Is that the desire of the, is that what we're stating, is that that's what we want to see happen, is nothing?
No, I think what it's somewhat doing is looking at what is the potential. I think that's incorrect, that, you know, there is that potential there. We know there's some sites there that will, by 2040 will be redeveloped.
Right.
At those densities.
Well,
Talk about that high, we're talking about the potential downtown site where most logically high density would take place.
Yeah, I mean, I could expect that at greater than 15, you know, based on at least our current development standards.
So is it not appropriate to put that in there to begin with, or is it PUD only?
I think it'd be appropriate to increase that.
So like
Make a
25
recommendation
or
to
something like
council.
that?
Sorry?
Up to 25 or something like that?
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that's a recommendation we can make to council. We want to, you know, one of the reasons I requested that Ryan be here is so that if we, you know, do these sort of recalculations, that, you know, he's here to, you know, tell us if we're just way off base and something like that. But understanding that some of, you know, not all the downtown is going to redevelop, you know, at a higher density. Because some will remain in, you know, like a historic downtown. But Ryan, do you have any input on that?
Zoning density?
Well, just, is the infrastructure there to permit 25 units per acre density?
Yeah, that's things that, you know, are gonna have to obviously be explored separately, because just to take a concept map and apply it with 1960 infrastructure, you know, you're dealing with a lot of I&I as you proceed northward. So when you do a comp plan things, you break these into areas within the comp plan, and you have different zones, and they're all, you know, broken down: Forest Lake District, Clear Lake District, City District, Township District, South District. It's all kind of totaled volumes based on what you guys have decided on zoning. Now, there's obviously specific segments probably within there that we're pretty close to capacity. There's segments within there that we got additional capacity. That's things we always have to continue to monitor when we got applications come in. Really, one thing the city's never done is, you know, a full sanitary sewer study where you actually put in flow meters within structures to get real live flows. We got lift station data and all that, but then in between the lines with all the I&I up in that area that we're trying to continue to chase and doing with street projects and stuff like that. So it gets kind of difficult once you get north of 11th Avenue, per se, because that's where the old interceptor came up to, where the old plant used to be, where the water tower is, and the lines basically splits. So you got a line that heads eastward and goes up 61, right up under nice 61, and then comes up and all the way, you know, past Lighthouse Lofts. And you got another line then that splits at that area, and it comes up 2nd Avenue until it gets to 2nd or so, then it heads west 1 block, then up 3rd. So you got the two lines coming in, so depending on where you develop in that area, you're gonna have options potentially on which direction you take sewer to. So, or eventually if, you know, one line gets full on that size and it hasn't been appropriately upsized through the development fees we collect, that's why we collect those. And you just plan for those for expansion. Obviously under 61, you know, we're gonna, if we go with the higher density zoning, we're gonna wanna be a lot more in tune with that in any future MnDOT improvements. So those sections of line could be upgraded at that time. You know, there's some things you can do pipe bursting like that, but you still gotta chase all the sewer services. So it's kind of a loaded question. But ultimately, even with our total build out based on the land use changes that were proposed, you know, we're well over capacity of what Interceptor 7029 can provide. And that's now then shown in the document to the Met Council. So now planning has to continue for upsizing the Interceptor itself, or is there a additional plant someday somewhere to be built in between here and St. Paul, right? So obviously a lot of peaking factors built within that too. So, you know, the safety factor, the conservity and all that, that's implementing that. And we're obviously not gonna get to the build out that we're showing that all the stuff's calculated on. So that buys you some of that time, and the Met Council knows that, and you know, that's why the rates can continue to go up, because they're building capacity within the line as well. I think we pay somewhere around $1.2 million a year for discharge of flowage. If we didn't have that, we'd probably have somewhere in the ballpark a $30 million wastewater treatment plant, at least three full-time operators, and all the ownership, operation and maintenance to go with that. So, you know, that's kind of all the things involved with your sewer system in quick nutshell. As we go south, and we didn't already start the pipe extensions, you know, like say 190th, you know, we've had a lot of activity around 190th. What we're deciding east of 61 right now, that first development out of the gate, is that pipe's gonna be sized to feed that. We have that opportunity to make that decision now. So that's how important it is, especially when we get south, and we changed, you know, we've changed a lot down there, but what we go with, we gotta size and then build out of that interceptor line accordingly.
You know, we get a fair amount of pressure that it's very expensive to build housing, which I think we all agree on. So the developers would like smaller lots, which increases your density. So really my question was, are we out of line bumping these up so you have a little better picture of what the reality is gonna be? Or we just hope for the best?
You know, you hear when developers have come in from other communities, they're seeing the smaller lot sizes too. The younger generation doesn't want the big lots. But also with permitting requirements that are in place today, Chestnut Creek, what was it, zone 3 to 5 units per acre?
Yeah.
And what did we actually get? It was less than 2, right?
Just a little under 2.
With all the wetlands. So comp plan probably for 5, and we got less than 2, because that's what permitting requirements lead to you nowadays, with all the buffer requirements, roadway network, you know, if you want sidewalks and stuff like that. So, you know, that consumes a lot of space, and the buffer requirements are obviously impact a lot, you know, pretty strict requirements around wetland mitigation, you know.
So the density is not based on buildable acreage, it's built on.
You take an general area minus the wetlands, and that's how you kind of estimate it. But when it comes in with a real project plan, do they want a park? Do they want trails? You know, you're consuming space really rapidly on a big plat like that, and that's just the unique spot about where Chestnut Creek development is. Got a lot of wetlands within it, and the rules are getting stricter to protect those types of that type of land. So then our actual density at the end of a project is less. Therefore, then that's where the expense per lot is, you know, gets more expensive, obviously. So if you had smaller lots, you could put more properties on a site, which potentially could offset some of the development costs, and then make homes cheaper.
Thank you. Dennis?
So, you know, we can't just arbitrarily come in with higher densities here without taking that kind of, you know, the whole sewer capacity issue. And I'm assuming the sewer capacity is the more critical of the two, sewer versus water. Water is a little easier to deal with. I mean, we do our own water here, right? We don't depend on the Met Council for our water. That's all done locally here.
Correct.
Right? So it's basically the sewer then is gonna be kind of the thing that you know, or at least tempers this whole density issue. What I wanna do is I wanna make it as attractive as we possibly can for, I'm not looking to necessarily just be trendy, but I want to be realistic about development and developers coming in here and looking for, you know, to develop stuff that both works for them and for the buyer and for us as a city. And I just want to make sure we're doing everything that we can as a city to make it attractive for developers. And I'm not saying I'm just looking to, develop the living daylights out of the city, but I mean, I think if we want to continue to grow and be vibrant as a city, we've got to, we've got to continue to have housing, lots and developable land for developers to come in and do it in a relatively economical fashion.
So Donovan, now that we disrupted your presentation, I know you have other stuff to cover, right?
Well, I'd just like to, first of all, just suggest a change for that table 215, the residential density calculations, and to include that a 25 unit maximum, and take some of that, in order not to increase the total, but to shift some of that from the low medium density to that downtown mixed use. I'd like to, have Planning Commission's consent to rework that, so we don't end up increasing this, but we do shift it to downtown, where I think it's a good point in order to do that, to reflect the reality of what we'll see there as far as density and the fact that some of those sites will be redeveloped in our planned time.
What table are you on, Donovan?
It's the one page 20.
2-15.
Okay, the tab.
Basically, look at the 6 acres being developed at the 25 units per acre density. Then to adjust the other numbers.
What else do you have for us, sir?
And then, also I did look at our notes from an April meeting, and to expand that, the downtown area up to 6th Street Northeast. As suggested at the last meeting. The area I'm referring to is with 6th Street being here, that this be zone, the downtown mixed use, the purple color, to accommodate higher density and take advantage of one of the main amenities of Forest Lake, which is that that lake shore. As a future land use.
So pretty much all the way up to Birchwood?
Right. And this is.
That's 6 there, right? 5th is the short one, and then that would be
Birch
6.
was here, and it's the HRA property whose name escapes me at the moment is there.
Yep.
So that's what you have it colored as now?
It's just the that low medium density residential. So,
The same as it is to the northeast there.
Yeah, so it's the purple, the downtown mixed use.
Yeah, so are you extending it a block, or how far are you extending it beyond what it is right now?
Up to 6th. So all this up to here would be
okay.
would be the purple.
All right.
Oh, I see. All right.
This is how it is now.
Okay. So that really is the comments I have right now. I'd like to turn over to the Planning Commission for discussion. With the what seek to do is have a recommendation from the Planning Commission to send to council this evening.
We're sending a draft to the council,
Correct.
and then it comes back to us after everybody else fills in the blanks, like for the parks and whatnot. Or do we see this again? I guess that's the question.
It's my intention that this be the final meeting for the Planning Commission reviewing the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Final meeting.
Final meeting for us.
All right. Donovan, can you explain what you mean by the staging map? That's on page 22. What does that actually mean?
Basically, that's the the MUSA boundary map. And I'll pull that up.
That's the idea.
Well, it's exactly.
The colors are hard to read on that map.
Yeah, yeah. It's so similar.
It ought to be more faded when they, but there is a line. You can see that they're purple and a blue here. Kind of following. Kind of.
It's a little easier to see in the computer.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry.
Page 28
Actually, it's 22 on mine.
on the file.
Right there.
Yeah.
So what this does is basically set up utility extension so that we have, boundaries for, for the MUSA boundary for, the 2031, the current one, and then the 2040 extending out to here, and then, the post 2040, which is, basically this, this line. So this is the idea that, where we don't want to have a leapfrog development. So the city is saying, this is, how far where we expect to accommodate growth by, these time periods.
Okay.
Other questions?
Can you blow up that, the index a little better on that?
Sure.
Okay.
And then slide it to the left, since most of the development's in this corner.
Yeah, it's just really a hard map to read. It's
that's what I
really
thought.
difficult to read.
What do you think would make it easier?
I'm not sure. I mean, you've got the 2020 MUSA, the 2030 MUSA, the 2040 MUSA, and the post-2040 MUSA. And you've got the zip patterns to reflect those areas, and then the colored boundary lines. And I don't know, is it just me? I just find it very difficult to read.
Use some different colors on the MUSA line. Maybe like red, white, and blue or something where it's very
you got
distinctively different.
Light blue, medium
I
blue.
mean, it's kind of an important map. It's just like the applicant that was here tonight, doing the grading plan and anticipating development of his property. Well, his property on this map isn't within the stage growth plan either, or the staging plan for utilities. And I think this is an important map that we should make sure that it's clear to anybody that picks it up and to read it.
Unless the utility infrastructure is part of a pretty serious plan, there's not much development that's going to be possible. Without going back to the well and septic program, which I think is really offensive personally, but.
Maybe on the MUSA 2020, you do a Roman numeral 1, and all the areas that are 2020 are Roman numeral 1 with the same pattern, and then the 2030 is Roman numeral 2, and so on and so forth. Maybe you number them as well as the pattern.
Oh, a number within the color field?
Yeah, a number within the district. Or a letter or something that
Yeah, I think
Or
we-
maybe just 2020, maybe that's what you put in there, is the date, the year, 2020, 2030, 2040. You know, within the boundary of the area that you're talking about.
It could work in some areas. You know, obviously, it's, you know, when we get into other areas, well, we can definitely can clarify that for you.
So can you point out what area under, let's just take the 20, let's say the 2030 MUSA line area, I mean, that's the next 11 and a half years. So it's, am I seeing this right, that it's basically this area east of 61 there, south of 50?
Correct.
East, no, on the other
No,
side.
so it starts over on the west side.
Oh, it does, okay, so it includes all of this area then too?
Yeah, the way I'm seeing it, yeah, it's there and then up to here.
Okay, so we're saying to developers then, this is all land that by 2030, are we making any kind of a commitment?
Kind of, yeah.
Potential
No, it's-
landowners, buyers, developers?
Sure.
That this, that we are going to extend sewer and water to these locations? Is that?
Eventually we will, but we're not gonna, if the guy wants it at the very south to 2030, either he pays for it to come all the way down there.
Okay, right.
Or he's gotta wait for it to develop. The whole
This is our
point
best-
is to box them in a little bit,
Yes,
orderly
and I'm
development.
for that. I understand how that
So
works.
he's not putting the big sewer all the way down, otherwise we'd
So
have
we don't
them
get
houses.
Houston, Texas, that's what we're,
No.
well, they just don't have it, they don't have any zoning and just everything, everywhere.
All right. Okay, well, I think that clarifies it a little, and I guess what I'm concerned about a little bit is that if this gets laid in front of the city council and it's kind of mushy, it's gonna be hard for them to say makes sense or doesn't make sense. If it's not a little bit clear.
Are you making a statement about their intelligence?
No, I'm just, the familiarity. So can we jump to page 28? And I'm not gonna harp on the lack of adult activities in parks, but it does say there that there are almost 13 parks per 1,000 residents in Forest Lake. And I think that might be an exaggeration. Should that be 10,000 residents?
Saying page 28?
Right. Right in the middle of the page.
Is this 28 of the,
You're on the correct page. Yeah, that's the page.
From the bottom.
Minnesota Green Step Cities?
oh. I'll have to check on that one. I mean, that was part of the,
I'm guessing it's a typo. 'Cause
Otherwise,
I know there's not 13 parks per 1,000 people.
that'd be 2,600 parks, or 260 parks.
I know there's 24 parks, so that comes out at about 13 per 10,000 people, but.
No, we're about 20,000 people, so that'd be 130 parks.
And we doubled it, 260. Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of parks, but I think that's supposed to be 10,000 residents.
I have a suspicion, Donovan, that is 13 acres of parkland or something along those lines.
No, there's more than 13 acres.
Yeah,
But
we got some
even-
pretty
Well,
big
maybe per
parks.
1,000, I don't know.
Well, per thousand.
I'll have to check on that one.
Yeah.
What's the other correction you gave Donovan last time? That's what I was wondering. They have to do with the parks.
I guess the only concern I have is kind of on the accuracy of it, so that. The other thing that, on the area of housing, one of the things that seems to be becoming more and more popular around other areas of the metro is co-op housing. And there's not, talks about expand owner-operator senior housing options, and maybe that's given that co-op housing is one of those options. So maybe it doesn't have to be that specific? I don't know.
Well, I mean, we could, there are tools for housing, and I mean, co-ops, basically it's an ownership structure.
Right.
And so it's a private contract, in real estate. So, I mean, it definitely, offers good opportunities. We could refer to it as a potential tool.
Well, and that's the only thing under the objectives, it just says owner-operator senior housing, and that's probably adequate enough. That's maybe the conclusion.
I mean, do you believe it's adequate enough? Or would you?
For a statement, maybe. I mean, you could certainly add the term, the cooperative housing or such as, to make it clear, I think clearer.
That sounds reasonable.
The other thing in regard to housing, and this probably won't make any sense, but there's a lot of single-family developments that are going on, but the percentage of them versus the multi-housing is kind of way wacky at the moment, since 2010 probably, or 2012. The majority of the building has, in terms of volume of units, has been multi-family, which is contrary to the typical status of Forest Lake. So it doesn't give you any kind of a path to say that more single-family homes that are more affordable should be built. And maybe again, I'm getting too specific.
Well, I mean, you can put it as like a 20,000-foot goal to increase, expand owner-occupied senior options. I mean, that's kind of stating that.
But it doesn't only have to be senior options, because I think there's a, when you look at the inflow, outflow of workers for the Forest Lake, it's a bedroom community. And a huge percentage of the people that work in Forest Lake don't live in Forest Lake, which can convert to, it's not affordable. The person that works at the bank or works at Walmart or works at Target or wherever can't afford real estate in Forest Lake. So they either rent or they live in North Branch or someplace else.
What would be your definition of affordable? Price range about?
$250. And pretty much all of the developments that are going on right now are 400 plus. There's hardly anything at the $300,000 level. And for people, even a couple that are working in a service industry in Forest Lake, aren't going to buy a $400,000 house. Can't.
I don't think we can, well, I don't know if we can or not. I don't think we should necessarily dictate how much the value of a home or a complex should be mandated to be at a minimum or a maximum. It's really market driven. And I think the way that, if you wanted to control it, I think the way to do that is to say, in our regulatory policy that says you have to build these features into the homes. The siding has to be of this quality or that nature. The landscaping has to be of this level, and the more restrictive we are, the more expensive homes are. The less restrictive we are, the less expensive homes are. And so I think the balance here is, do we want to have high quality, very nice looking neighborhoods that are more expensive, or do we want to have lower quality, more affordable? And it's going to be market driven either way. If we leave very high standards and we say houses have to come in below 250, and the market's saying that very high standards are paying 350, nobody's going to build here. And then you don't have anything.
I guess I'm more, I look at this as an encouragement as opposed to a rule. leaving the door open or giving the encouragement of, and that encouragement might include smaller lots or less expensive land somehow, or city participation in sewer water fees or whatever. And that's the other thing, there's a couple of pages, 2.5 pages, of things that can be done by the city or others for helping affordable housing. But in just recent history in the last month or so, those ideas are rejected by the city. So do we leave it in there with the idea that future city fathers will change their mind? Or is it, it's turned into stuff that doesn't mean anything, I guess is what I'm saying. But again, that's something that could be left totally alone.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the difference between weather and climate. The weather's going to change, but to me, the comp plan creates a climate, and where there's many options. And the worst thing I think we do is to think we know better than what's going to happen in 2040, because we're only guessing. And what I'd like to see is ways that we could provide some support for the goals we see now, like to support the vision. And I can see a statement for these objectives that just says, list the objective, promote owner-occupied, single-family affordability, housing affordability. So it doesn't say how to do that, and we're not going to pretend, because it might be something related to materials. To address Commissioner Langness's comment, the city doesn't have a lot within zoning as far as the units. Like we don't have design standards, we don't have the requirement that the homes be stick-built, those sort of things that some communities have. But there are many things within zoning, and one thing you've identified, like minimum lot sizes, that really don't contribute to affordability. So, if we put in some statement that, as an objective to promote that owner-occupied single-family housing affordability, we're not saying how to do it, but it allows a future council or even the present council to look at that and say, you know what, and, during rezoning, to say, maybe there's some things we can look at. There are a lot of options I don't think that Forest Lake as a community is willing to look at as far as housing affordability, but there are options out there. And maybe the city will move in that direction for, these other ones. Tiny houses, for instance. There's, tiny lots, tiny houses. They're well constructed. They meet the housing code standards, building code standards. But, that's not been a part of our conversation. I don't expect it to. I'm not promoting that. But, that could be, that could produce the $250,000 homes in Forest Lake.
Kevin, this is your business. You've been woefully quiet over here. I don't think any of us want to mandate affordable housing be built here, there, anywhere, but in order to get more affordable, what's your nickel opinion on what we need to change or make sure is in there so if a developer wants, they would be able to do it? They do lower priced homes.
Well, thanks for asking, Paul. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting, I got a call from one of our leading media outlets in the Twin Cities here recently, and their whole conversation was regards to density. And I think the only way that, you're going to be able to build, and there's other people in this room that could probably back me up or vouch or have their own opinions, but is if you can't have a greater density on your land, you can't build affordable housing. And, like everyone has said here, between the restrictions that you might have between, in some cases watershed or city rules or DNR or whatever it might be, that's going to all affect what your density is going to be on a piece of property. A homeowner is going to sell their property for what the market value is. And based on how we've got our density maps and our development maps set, that's going to determine to a developer what it's going to cost to develop it. And then based on what the city's fees are for the water and the sewer and the streets and the curbs and the gutters and utilities, that's going to determine the cost of the lot, right? We don't have, there's people here that have been doing this business for a long time, developing. And the only thing I would say is if we want to be a city that is a leader and we don't miss the opportunity to get developments, we have to have our density available today. Can't be 20, 30, and 20, 40. We need to change our density maps so that the stuff that can get built on right now can accommodate our developers to come to our city and build today, or we're gonna lose them. And then in 10 years from now, maybe the economy's different. Maybe it's like it was in 2005 or 2006, and nobody's building. So then we're sitting with a bunch of land that we can't develop. So I think, you know, my opinion is, there's a lot of people in Forest Lake that don't want the city to grow real fast. And, you know, there are people that want the city to grow and be a leader in our community, or be a leader in our state. We want jobs, we want people to come here. I really think that we should be focusing on, more importantly, how to get our density to a point right now so that we can take advantage of development opportunities today, because the economy is strong today. And the economy is good today, and people have money today, and people are willing to spend money today, and people are willing to build businesses today and open and create jobs. We don't know what's gonna happen in 10 years or 20 years from now. So it's great to have this plan, to have this density increase in the next 10 years or the next 20 years, but we may miss the opportunity. That's just my opinion. But whatever the city and the infrastructure is, that's what we have to go by. But I think as a leader, if the city wants to be a leader, we should take a risk and move our infrastructure out a little bit to bring in those developers to build right now while we have the opportunity. That's my thought.
That's right. And I agree with that 100%. And that spells investment in infrastructure by the city now.
Yeah, there's a risk involved, but I think this is the economy to do it, and this is the chance we have to maybe increase and move our infrastructure so we can attract those businesses today. That's my thought. Mike, you were gonna say something?
My thought is the densities reflected in the land use plan are adequate. I think those are okay. Where the rubber meets the road is really in the zoning ordinance. If we say single-family areas can allow 4 units per acre or 3 units per acre, if our minimum lot size is 85, 90 feet wide, you're not going to accomplish that. If in the zoning code, if we're able to allow 55 or 60-foot wide lots, then you may be able to accomplish that kind of density. But you know, it all adds up. It starts with the cost of the land, cost of development, the cost of curbing, sewer, water, the cost of underground utilities, the cost of blacktopping, and you know, it's no wonder that a single-family lot is $100,000 today. I mean, with the permitting, the process, and with a $100,000 lot, you've got a $150,000 house to build a house for to meet your affordability. You can't do it. You absolutely can't do it. So I think, you know, we also have our PUD process. You know, I think we have to be open to a PUD process that allows for flexibility in design, good land planning and flexibility in a residential subdivision. It doesn't mean we give away everything through the PUD process, but I think we've got to be flexible when a developer comes before us and presents a proposal. If there's a market out there, they'll come and they'll build it, if there's a market.
And I think that the important thing is that our planning encourages that. So the developer isn't just scared away that there's something in there that says, you know, there's a possibility that I can do this and I'll pursue it. Because if you scare them away, then they're in Hugo or they're somewhere else.
Right.
So that brought to my earlier with the density, when you look at our single family, it's 1 to 3. I would advocate to push it to 1 to 4. Because if we stick at 1 to 3, then your math works out to a 15,000 square foot lot. Go to 1 to 4, you're down to 11,000. So once they change the other one 3-6 instead of 3.6, then you get up to 6 an acre. The lots are getting small. Not as small as my first house in St. Paul, but small. Smaller, and so twice or 3 times what I grew up on in Chicago. So, and I cut somebody off, and I apologize. Who did I cut off down there? Dennis?
Well, I just want to say that that's, you know, what was just said is the way that I think. that I think that I'm all for this, you know, the long-term look at this thing, the 30,000-foot look at this thing. But I want to do everything that we in our power can do here to make it attractive now to for developers to come in. The PUD process seems to be a tool that can be used on in the short-term basis. But when you make the changes in the comp plan, I believe you're making a statement about, you know, where you're headed as a city, and I think that the city of Forest Lake is woefully in need of making some positive statements to developers, and indicating the direction that they want this city to go to by simple things like density. And I know I've been harping at this since day one, but I don't apologize for that, because I'm absolutely convinced that, you know, you indicate by that where you're headed as a city, and I think we've got to do everything we can if we're genuinely interested in seeing continued development of the city.
Okay, can I get you to jump to page 66? Can we jump topics for a moment?
We've beat this one well enough, I'm sure we can.
Yeah. Page 66, it says principal arterials, and it lists Interstate Highway 35, and it lists US Trunk Highway 8. Shouldn't Highway 61 be included in that list?
What page are you on?
66.
What about 97? Did 97?
Probably too. It seems like Highway 97 and Highway 61 are left off. Is that true?
They're a minor arterial, and then it goes to the next page.
Okay, Highway 97 is into and through Highway 61. Oh, I see. Why would they be minor versus Highway 8? Wow.
I wish they had easier language to follow. I even had to ask
I apologize. I actually didn't see Highway 61 on that second page.
So those names are obviously set by other agencies or classifications.
But it pretty much is cars per day type of classifications.
Well, it comes down to the naming convention of it too. So like, you could have a county state aid highway and a county road, right? Those are two big things, even though they sound the same. And the classification of traffic they're taking, connection points play into that. But there are, I mean, if you read the paragraphs above the name, it helps you explain a little bit too of how they come to the naming convention. This isn't something as a local municipality as I would deal with often. The naming convention becomes important to me when we're writing grants, because if I can say I connect to a certain type of arterial, that plays a big role in some grant applications. I don't clearly can't explain what it really is.
So it isn't just traffic volume?
No, it plays into the regional system, the regional model.
Oh, okay.
Chair Gerard, if I could remind you, this is a public hearing also, and we've had some very patient folks who maybe also want to speak.
Boy, Donovan, thanks for being so subtle. Did you forget your 2x4 tonight?
This presentation, huh?
Presentation. Are you finished with your remarks?
Yes, I am. Thank you for asking.
All right, and as Donovan so politely informed me, this is a public hearing. This will run the same as the last one. If you wish to speak to this issue of the comprehensive plan, we ask that you come up, state your name and address for the record, spend a couple minutes giving your thoughts on whatever part of the plan that you would like to discuss. We'll listen to everyone who's here, and when everyone's come forward, then we will close the public hearing. So that being said, does anyone wish to speak to the application?
Yes. Hi, I'm Jennifer Lorge, 1286 Island Drive in Forest Lake. I'm on the EDA for Forest Lake. I'm the new chair of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a local realtor. I have a few things I'd like to say. First of all, I am in support of the comprehensive plan, and I really congratulate you all and thank you all for the hard work you've done and the citizens, their input, and all the hours. It's an amazing piece of work. I specifically would like to address page 29, economic competitiveness. I'd like to highlight the introduction. The City of Forest Lake and the Forest Lake Economic Development Authority have made a conscious decision to identify a connection between economic development and quality of life. By working together, the city, the EDA, and the community can help to maintain a strong economy by creating and retaining desirable jobs which provide a good standard of living for individuals. Increased personal income and wealth can increase the tax base so as to allow the City of Forest Lake to provide the level of services residents expect. What I would like to ask is better communication between the EDA, the Planning Commission, and the City Council. I would like them to review this paragraph when they're considering businesses that want to move into the area that are bringing good, high-paying jobs, and give us good reasons if they turn them down. I want the communication to stay open. I'd like the EDA more involved, not after the fact, but before, if that's possible. But I thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the issue?
I hadn't planned, Warren Zank, 8186 Scandia Trail North. I hadn't planned on speaking to this issue, but this is my first Planning Commission meeting I've ever attended, and when I saw some of the papers on the previous project that I spoke about to 2040, I thought, is that a mistake? Who plans that far out? So that's great to be planning that far out. I think it's wonderful. It's an eye-opener for me. Mr. Miller talked about the city taking a risk and pushing the sewer and things farther now so to take advantage of builders who may want to come in now. Who pays for that? Is that the taxpayer?
Yes.
Ryan will answer the question because none of us want to misspeak.
It can be a combination of different resources. So if it's a developer-led project, typically the developer's paying 100% of the infrastructure expansion to their development. If they're oversizing that infrastructure, they get credit back through the sewer and water area charges that we charge them per the acre of their development, minus the wetland areas. So in essence, they're basically paying for an 8-inch pipe extension, even if they needed a 12-inch per our comprehensive plan to serve the area, right? So they get charged back that. Other than just development-led projects, the last time the City of Forest Lake expanded sanitary sewer on its own, taken development fees, but then also assessed adjacent property owners, and some of those could be deferred at the time a development application came forward, and like that. We did that in 2004 from Highway 61 east on the south side of County Road 50 or 202nd there east to Goodview, and that's when Hawthorne Heights went boom. So, that was using developer fees that were already paid into the area charges and that. Typically, we wouldn't really bring something out to an existing residential neighborhood unless it was petitioned, because we would have to go through the assessment 429 process and all that, just like you would a street project. I see that potentially maybe happening with water main someday to expand that east of Harrow Avenue, especially up around the lake where you have all the densities and the connections. But you can also then, in that situation too, you're going to have the connection fee itself, and that's $1,800 a household right now. So that's how sometimes those are all financed. So it's kind of, long story short, project independent, but since 2004, it's been all development driven.
So I think to answer the gentleman's question, he's not getting taxed for it.
No.
There's nothing on the property taxes that does any of the water sewer infrastructure.
Those are all user rates for that stuff, for the maintenance and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Continuing, when I was of school age, my parents selected a community in which to move based on the school system. And at that time, they selected South St. Paul, which was I think it was the first in the state to have baccalaureate programs. And I think the community seems to be unwilling to support the Forest Lake schools, which I think, by my assessment, are falling behind. I don't have children in the school system anymore. But if they don't support the school system, it's going to keep on falling farther behind. And I think that's going to limit the attraction of people moving into the community. So I'll end with that.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak to the issue? We have a last call. Does anyone else wish to speak to the issue? See none of the crowd coming forward, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission.
I'll comment on the comment about the schools. There isn't much in the plan on schools, whether it's our public school system, our vibrant several charter schools in the district, private school. And the reason for that is those are all independently run outside of the city. I can tell you historically, this Planning Commission, as long as I've been on here, we've seen numerous plans from the Leela Charter School, both of them, in fact. We have seen plans come forward from St. Peter's, and we have seen plans come forward, I want to say, from every single building that the school district owns in the city, including the bus garage. And we have been what's that?
North Lakes too.
North Lakes, yeah.
Was that before me? I don't remember North Lakes.
Yeah, they did an expansion too in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It might have been just before I was on here. I don't remember. Maybe it was North Lakes not that long ago as well. But from what I recall, the Planning Commission has historically been very supportive of all of these actions. And so I think if there's something that you're looking for in the schools, those questions need to go to those numerous school boards or those private organizations. Because there's not much beyond what we already do and allow. So I don't know what you're looking for us to add in there.
No, nothing for you. It's just a commentary that we don't have solid schools. It's not going to attract quality people to the community.
Okay.
Good point.
I don't know what you can do about it, perhaps. Something.
Other discussion on the comp plan from the commissioners?
The only thing I would say is that the number of things that might have been typos, that we make sure that we correct the typos.
Yes, sir.
Other than that, I'm good.
So I would, based on wanting to increase the density, I'd like to have the single-family residential be 1 to 4 homes, to bring the lot size down a little bit. I think 5 could be a little tricky, and there's not that much of it either. If you look, it's that dark yellow, the salmon or whatever color that is, has got a lot more to 6.
I'm not opposed to the suggestion, but I would like Ryan's, and I know this is really putting you on the spot, but does that change? Do you believe that significantly changes like sewer impacts and other things that make that infeasible, or is that a reasonable adjustment that can be mitigated elsewhere easily?
I think it's a reasonable adjustment because it's going to really affect south of 97, and that's where we have the ability to still build that new infrastructure.
Okay.
Now is the time to know.
So are you referring to, again, I'm looking at page 20, the low-density zoning category that currently says 1.5 to 3 units per acre?
Can you put that on the screen?
Low density is single family, correct? That's the yellow on our map,
Yeah.
right? Low density,
Yeah,
yes.
that's what we, in the past, have translated into the single-family zoning district.
Yes, that one.
We have 1.5 to 3 at the moment.
And I would recommend we bring it up to 4.
Okay. Is there a consensus on that?
Is for me.
Yay.
And then would you move the next one as a 4 to 6 per acre, low to medium density?
That's what I was gonna say.
Well.
Or would you
it'd
go
be up
4
the
to 7?
zoner. You got the question is if we want to allow larger developments. So if he wants to be down at 3, the developer, that's fine. He's allowed up to 6, and if you look at a 6 per acre, 45,000, must be what, about 8,000? About 7,500 square foot lot
7,500, yep.
is roughly, that's getting down there for suburban area. Again, we're gonna have to adjust the lot widths.
Yep.
And
Yeah, that's it. He said.
so I'm fine with the 3 to 6. Because I'm kind of looking at,
And do you need
Single
motions
family.
on this stuff, Donovan, or?
Not on these individual, not the individual input, but a motion, for a recommendation, please.
You mean to accept the comp plan as drafted
With the changes we discussed.
with the changes
yeah.
discussed?
On that same chart, would you change the desired distribution percentage to include something for the downtown mixed use?
Certainly, yeah.
And what have you got left? Do we assume that the other numbers add up to 100? Yeah, they do. So you're going to take away from somebody to allow 5% or something like that? Is that true?
Yeah, my first thought, I'll discuss it with Jane, but I think my first thought is to reduce the low medium density percentage.
The 55 and then go 5 of the other?
Probably not 55, because we're only talking about 6 acres of,
this
identified
might be 1.
downtown mixed
That
use.
could be. I see.
It'll be a small number adjustment.
Yeah,
Wouldn't expect 6 acres to get bigger than 1.
No, because 29 acres is 1% on medium density. Okay.
Other discussion?
I'll make a motion that we approve, or no, I apologize. I make a motion that we recommend to City Council approval of the comprehensive plan with the change on printed page 20 that the chair outlined, modifying it to 1 to 4 acres, or 1 to 4 units per acre.
I'll second. Discussion, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all commission members for all your input on this plan. Donovan and Ryan for all your work. Ryan, it's been a pleasure having you here this evening.
Anytime.
Please come anytime.
yeah, I kind of liked him, yeah, you gotta come back.
It's every other Wednesday, right?
So, we have one more item on the agenda. The temporary non-commercial sign zoning text amendment. We will hold a public hearing and we'll consider a zoning text amendment. Donovan, you're presenting?
Yes, sir. I don't know how to present this on as a visual. But if you recall, it was in the winter. We had basically kind of a working session around temporary signs. We're talking about banner signs and whatnot, and I took that to council as a workshop item, and then we talked more about signs, and then I took it to the city attorney, and the goal was my goal was to make all the sign regulations content neutral, to be consistent with the 2015 U.S. Supreme Court decision that really, I think, had a ripple effect with sign codes throughout the nation, where no longer could you kind of put categories on different types of signs based on their content. And currently there's signs allowed for different real estate interests or community benefit or these sorts of things. And the city attorney found that such a big burden to change in one fell swoop that we thought we'd actually really focus on the issue at hand, which was the temporary non-commercial signs. And in common parlance, that would be the political signs, for instance. And we actually are in the state general election season for signage. And so what we have before you is an ordinance that we did workshop with the council, and they had some feedback. And then with that, the city attorney did draft ordinance language that, first of all, make some amendments to the definitions to remove the definition of an opinion sign to make it more content neutral and define it as a non-commercial sign. And then also, in general terms, kind of basically put this in consistent language with the state statute that says during the period beginning 46 days before a state primary to 10 days after the election. And so that's roughly from a period in, I think it's April. It's from, actually, I'm sorry, this year it's June 29th through November 16th. State statute says for election signs that municipalities can't restrict the size or number of political signs. And so what this draft ordinance attempts to do is to basically limit where the location is of these signs. And that was a big issue with last election season. And the city administrator and I had a very memorable day picking up about 300 signs that were placed in the public right-of-way prior to the 2016 election. And though it was so enjoyable, I think we were about the only ones who enjoyed it, because by about 1:30 in the afternoon, the campaigns were calling us and weren't very happy that their signs were removed. And we did return those to different campaigns, but really wanted to make those location much simpler, and taking the feedback from what Plan Commission had regarding how location of these based on what anyone could identify as a curb, as a sidewalk, as a trail. We've now have proposed standards that say the signs within this general election period, the 46 days before the primary for a state general election, and 10 days following, that these temporary non-commercial signs may be placed in unimproved areas of the public right-of-way, at least 5 feet from any improved portion of the right-of-way, at least 2 feet from any sidewalk or trail. And they must have the permission of the property owner abutting the right-of-way and not obstruct driver visibility. And then additionally, signs may not be placed in or on roundabouts. And so that's, there's many more details, and we could move into those, but I wanted to just stop there and see if the Plan Commission had any questions on the basic premise, and then, the location in which these signs are proposed to be limited to.
Questions for the city?
Is the unimproved right-of-way, improved right-of-way is a paved surface? Is that?
It's
How do you
it's city maintained, so it could be gravel, it could be paved, it could, it's
Okay.
where it's plowed,
Yeah.
it's.
Right, but it's a used or a usable piece of the usable part of the right-of-way.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So,
The boulevard is not part of that? The green?
No.
No.
so give me an example. This is one, the only part I really struggled with was, you can be in the public right-of-way if it's an unimproved part of the right-of-way.
In the boulevard.
Where is that?
Well, it's a boulevard, for instance, as Commissioner Black pointed out. It's, because there are large, the right-of-way is wider than the curb width, curb-to-curb width of the road or gravel edge. It's 2 feet from the sidewalk, it's 2 feet from the curb, it's 2 feet from the gravel edge. And, in this case, I think the way it's gonna, the way the signs are often put out, it's a property owner who wants to support a cause or a candidate, and they're putting in their lawn, and this provides, I think, pretty clear guidance. It's 2 feet from where you see that curb, you see that sidewalk. And obviously, this is only related to, city right-of-ways. I mean, obviously, there's, state and county within Forest Lake. But it's, I think the unimproved part is a confusing part, but if it's, it's 5 feet from the improved, but 2 feet from the sidewalk or trail, that's where I think it's clear, okay, you need to give some separation between the road or the sidewalk.
So I live on North Shore. So you're telling me 5 feet from the road edge or the gravel, I can have a sign there?
Correct.
So who gives permission, since that's not my property, for that sign to be there?
Well, it's
I maintain it because I have to, right?
Yeah. It's so that's the way it's written, it's the permission of the abutting property owner must be granted for that sign to be there. So you could grant yourself permission to put it there in front of your property.
Or my wife, the real boss.
So let's take that one step further. There's obvious places like let's just stay on North Shore there. There's, I drive North Shore too, but there's, places where the road makes curves and right angle bends and, sharp curves and stuff like that. So you've got a fairly sizable piece of property right there, which is probably all right-of-way. So you're saying that so that you have to you'd have to get permission from the people who abut that to put a sign there? I find it hard to believe.
That's a MnDOT right-of-way, so
okay.
That example doesn't work.
Okay.
But
On North Shore?
I mean, I thought you said.
No, I said North Shore.
I'm sorry, you said North Shore. Well, that's where enforcement becomes difficult, but
But what if it's a city park or something like that? Do you have to get permission from the city? Is that what that's saying? I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just trying to.
No, it's a good question. The way it's written, you would. I think it would be difficult for the city to grant that because it would be kind of offering, making some preference for, but it also, I think it would be difficult for it to not grant it because, again, it would be, conferring some
Okay,
preference. But I think on a case-by-case basis, we'd have to figure that out.
Other questions?
The number one, the violation, it says that if you find somebody in violation or if they're reported, you send them a letter, and then they have 15 days to do something about it. Is that the way I read that? So if they violate that 10 days before the election, the sign would stay there until after the election, and then they would remove it? Is that what would happen?
Well, correct, but there's also, I mean, there is within also elsewhere in the sign ordinance that if there is a sign within the city right-of-way, it can be removed. So if it was of such a nature where what really was, say, obstructing traffic, I mean, I think the city does have it, kind of a responsibility, but also the ability to remove that.
Mike?
Who's the zoning administrator?
C'est moi.
Okay. Well, because I see that was a change in there from.
Right. Yeah, Bridget looked at that and said, the city doesn't really do anything. It's actually, people within the city. So
right.
She wanted to put, actually put some agency to that, those actions that the city would do.
Is there any rules or regulations where when people put up signs, they have a name or a contact, a phone number or something somewhere on that sign on the back where, say it is located in the wrong area and you don't know who put it there or whatever, that it's part of our ordinance that all signs have some sort of a contact name or number on it so that the police or our new zoning czar can take it to the next step.
State law requires that already.
But it's not
For
enforced.
campaign signs.
It's not enforced here in Forest Lake.
But otherwise, if it's just a sign that's expressing an opinion, it's there are temporary, non-commercial sign in that category. That we can't require that the owner's name be placed there because that would be in conflict with that content neutral provision that the Supreme Court ruled on. So basically, if you can, campaign signs are a different. Different category, as Commissioner Langus was pointing out. But if you're the homeowner, saying you have your opinion, and basically, if you have to look at the sign to see whether it's compliant or not, actually read the sign, then that means that's a regulation that wouldn't pass muster within a court of law.
Are garage sale signs included in any of this?
Garage sale signs would be also, they'd be a temporary commercial sign, so.
Well, the reason I ask that is because I see them all over. They put up a sign, garage sale Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and that sign's been up there for 2-3 weeks. Nobody pulls them down. So that's where I come in with some sort of a contact number on that sign.
Correct. Well, those, again, I go back to the city doesn't need to notify people when it's within the right-of-way and that they feel a need to remove it. And that's kind of where, where the city, with these things, and that still exists in the city code where you can put the garage sale signs up, not in the right-of-way, on that temporary basis. And generally, those are pretty, they do get removed. People want to hold on to those. They're pretty much event-focused. It's the other ones, the commercial ones that, certain, business wants to advertise and just, plops their sign down. But right now, we're not changing those temporary commercial sign regulations, but it is an enforcement issue, I grant you that, and that's why I have a little blue truck that I drive around in and pick them up every now and then.
So, Donovan, it's 15 days to correct it, unless it's a temporary sign, which political signs would be, and then you give them 24 hours from date of notice.
Right.
So, with like a permanent would be 15 days and temporaries. So permanent might be someone who has an opinion on, I'm not even going there. I have a half a dozen in my mind that you'll see on I-94, let's say. They could put that on their property as a permanent sign.
Or permanent is more. You're putting a footing. In many cases too, I think it's more geared to the commercial signs, where there's more than just a wireframe sign.
So in the top part where you get 15 days, that's not political signs. They get 1 day after notice for like political signs. Right, you get near the bottom, it is same violation paragraph says, in the case of a temporary sign violation. Well, these are all temporary signs, correct? The political
That we're
ones.
talking about now, yes. Yeah.
So they get 1 day from day of notice, not 15.
Yes, that's correct. I didn't, that is correct.
So you get a free-for-all 24 hours before the election. Put up all your last signs.
Thank you, Commissioner Langness, for pointing that out. And actually, I included in the packet the League of Minnesota Cities, thing on campaign signs, and they say that it's basically it is that free for all. During the election season, it's a sign anarchy reigns during that time. So it's recognized that the city can make these rules, and we're trying to create something of to promote that exchange and have a robust election season, but sometimes it gets maybe a little too excited,
If you think it's anarchy in this country, you should go to South America during election time. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Other discussion on the ordinance, or the text amendment change? I'm sorry.
Can you just give a quick, now I'm confused. It says 15 days from the date of notice before, and then down below it says 24 hours. What's the what?
The difference is, basically it's where the sign has some permanency, where it's not like a wireframe sign. And this is the current language. This is the language we do give, on some occasions with signs that were put up without a permit, like for businesses, for instance.
All right. This is a public hearing, so we ask that if you wish to speak to this issue, state your name and address for the record, spend a few minutes telling us about this text amendment change, your thoughts on it. We will hear from everyone. After we've heard from everyone, we will close the public hearing. So we'll officially open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this issue?
Warren Zank, 8186 Ganja Trail North, and I hope you don't lock the doors the next meeting if I might show up. My wife and I were headed north on 61 into downtown last night, and there were all kinds of signs in the roundabout for arts in the park, music or farmer's market or whatever. So how does whoever runs arts in the park get away with putting signs in the roundabout? And then you're saying they can't. Is the precedent being set by the city itself or whoever runs that?
Duly noted. Good point.
I think I'm done for that.
We're here just about every second and fourth Wednesdays of the month if there's business. It's always on the website. Feel free to come anytime. A lot of times there's no one but one or two people.
No one but Laura.
So we appreciate the comments. So, anyone else wish to speak to the issue? I'll ask one last time. Does anyone else wish to speak to the issue? Seeing no one come forward, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for a recommendation to City Council.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, staff, I appreciate your time and effort working on this. It's a very difficult thing to do, to write an ordinance that tries to anticipate all situations, temporary signs, campaign signs. I have worked for cities, and I can tell you that one of the most difficult thing in code enforcement is regulation of signs. So I'm sure your attorney has spent a lot of time on this. I know you've spent a lot of time. I appreciate your efforts, and I can also say that no matter what we do, there's going to be loopholes, and it's always going to be something we got to work on and rebuild. but I appreciate your efforts, and I support what you're doing.
Thank you.
Other comments, concerns, motions? Yes, sir.
One question. Donovan, you kind of alluded earlier, like there may be question if somebody wanted to put up a political sign in a park. Do you think that is a necessary thing we need to put in here? Or do you think our staff would have the sense to deny anybody from putting any political sign up in any park?
Well, I think staff would not allow that. It certainly sets a precedent that I don't think anyone wants.
Most staff wouldn't have the authority to approve it. It'd have to go to council.
Yeah. And I have to kind of search my memory for, I mean, it just hasn't come up yet. And I don't know if, you know, I mean, obviously that the city can deny that because we're basically, in some ways, the city is a landlord.
Well, you had said before, like, you didn't know if you could or not.
Well, I think no, I think what you mean is what Dennis was, Dennis's question? Commissioner Batty's question?
It was in reference to putting up signs in the right-of-way along a park, like.
Well, I took the question to be, if it was in the right-of-way adjacent to a park, like basically the city was the adjacent property owner, right? That one, I'm not sure about, to tell you the truth. I mean, I think because it goes either way. I mean, if it's the city denies it, they could be showing some preference on it for whatever that sign expresses, or if they accept it, the same thing.
Is this going to council after us?
Yes.
Yeah, good question for the council.
I think it's a good question to ask the attorney to look at, and council will address it appropriately. And we don't need to. So that's said, I'll move, recommend.
Dan, you were going to make a comment?
I was going to say, just in terms of like signs and parks, like I know just in like Lakeside Memorial Park, for example, we don't allow anything to be staked in the ground. So if somebody were to put a wire campaign sign in there, we would deny it just on the fact that it probably would hit irrigation or something that's in there. So I don't believe it, it's, some of these are going to be on a case-by-case basis, like public parking lot out front, and somebody puts a truck out there with signs on it, that's a different situation than, say, you're putting in a wireframe sign. So I think some of the stuff you have to kind of go through and, on a case-by-case basis, take a look at it. I mean, there's just so many areas of gray that happen in terms of when you have right-of-way adjacent to public property, but we'll confirm back with the attorney just to make sure that that is clarified for council.
Excuse the interruption, Eric, you were stating?
Eric, you meant city parks, just the city parks, correct? Okay.
I'll move that we recommend passage to the city council of the ordinance as outlined in our packet.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just wanted to note, I very much agree with the commissioner's comments earlier on the end here in reference to there's going to be loopholes in here. I pointed one out comically, but I think this will really help staff in taking a huge burden of picking up a gazillion unnecessary signs up in right-of-ways. And I think that just frustrates homeowners. I think it frustrates candidates. I think it frustrates staff probably too. I guess they haven't told me that, but
there's a heart-rendering, story of we picked up Megatron for World Domination sign that belonged to a 6-year-old boy. It was in the right-of-way. We had to do equal, not discriminate against. We had to do equal enforcement. He did get his sign back, but
So I don't expect this to solve everything, but I think it's probably one of the much better ordinances that a city has in this regard. I would also recommend that the attorney the language that we have And I'm fine with it either way. I just think long-term it's better written in a manner that it doesn't say, in our language, 46 days before the election, blah, 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 but rather we point to state statutes. Should state statute change, our ordinance just changes with it. So those are my only other comments.
Thank you all for your comments on the signs. We have moved to the other. Donovan, you have anything for us?
Do we vote on that?
Excuse me.
My apologies. Yeah, the chair will call. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, commissioners, for putting me on the straight and narrow. My apologies for the slip of the tongue. We have moved to the other section. Donovan, do you have anything?
Well, I just want to thank you again, because I don't know if I've done that enough, for your work on this comprehensive plan. It's been a long process, and I really appreciate your input, your fact checking, and the guidance. And just otherwise, we do have an agenda item for the July 25th Plan Commission meeting, so I will see you then.
Okay, the only thing other that I'd like to say is I'd like to thank Jenny for coming and speaking on behalf of EDA and saying that it looks like we're on the right track. That was good. And thanks for the public comments, because we don't seem to get a huge amount of public input. So all is welcome.
Councilperson Bain, do you have any comments this evening? Fellow commissioners, anything?
I just have
Dennis?
one final, so just on what Jenny had brought up, just regarding the EDA Planning Commission collaboration, there was a request at the last EDA meeting to hold a joint meeting between the EDA and Planning Commission to discuss a parcel of land in the headwaters, that 140 acres that's just south of the YMCA that the city owns. Kind of do some small area planning to that site to kind of see what that site could potentially develop into. EDA has kind of started to dip their toes in that water a little bit to kind of do a little bit of, visioning for what that could look like, and they're looking for some Planning Commission input. So I'm working with Donovan trying to figure out when we can get the schedules to align to get the EDA and Planning Commission together to kind of get all the heads in one room, get the brain trust together to kind of look at that particular parcel and maybe develop some relationships that we could start doing that for other parcels as well. But that conversation was had at the EDA meeting. I just wanted you to be aware that could potentially be coming on a upcoming agenda for both the EDA and the Planning Commission.
Thanks. Dennis?
I'd like to read just a short statement here, if I might. I want to apologize for remarks that I made at the June 27th Planning Commission meeting. I spoke out in frustration and anger and should not have done so, either as a representative of Leela during our presentation or later during the other section of the commission meeting. I was clearly out of order in both situations. I made remarks about the accessibility of the city engineer, Ryan Goodman, and talked of lack of fair treatment on our part, when in truth I was the one being unfair in the comments that I made. While I may have had reason to be angry and frustrated, it was neither the time nor the place to express either. I'm truly sorry for my actions. Will strive not to let my anger be expressed in such a way again. I have spoken directly with Ryan and apologized to him for my remarks.
Thank you. Commissioners, anything else? Hearing nothing. Oh, Eric?
I wanted to go back to Dan's idea. Would maybe something we should look at with doing a joint meeting with the EDA is schedule something maybe once a quarter just on the calendar, and if there's something on an agenda, great. Then we all know what day it is, and if there's nothing to talk about, then there's nothing to talk about. But I think having a regularly scheduled meeting is a better idea than trying to coordinate something when it has to be coordinated.
And I think part of one of the conversations that I had with Donovan this morning to that point was, is it something that you could do before a late agenda at a Planning Commission meeting? So you just do a 6 to 7 one once a quarter, like you said, or something where, because the EDA typically meets at 5:30, so there's a little, they meet earlier, but we have to kind of figure out the logistics of what that will look like. But I just kind of want to float the idea so the Planning Commission's aware that there has been desire to kind of get the two groups together to kind of look at some potential land development.
Anything else, commissioners? Hearing nothing, the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you all for participating this evening.